Revenge is rarely sudden. It accumulates over years, in small humiliations, lies, indifference. In this video, we will look at 7 deaths that resulted from long conflicts in which one action triggered the next. These are not stories of heroism or justification. These are stories about a line that someone crossed one day. Florida, June 2020. A tropical heat wave hit Clearwater early in the morning, leaving a thin sheen of humidity on the sidewalks. For 34-year-old Alice Gray, these days were the same. Tension, distrust, endless calls to social services, and a sense of guilt she couldn't explain even to herself. 6 months ago, she had a quiet life, a job in an insurance agency office, 2 sons, and a routine that left no room for chaos. One person changed everything, the nanny she paid to trust, and who destroyed her family from the inside. Julia Maris came to their home smiling, attentive, with references that seemed impeccable. But in a few weeks, changes appeared in the children's behavior. The older one began to avoid his mother. The younger one cried at night for no reason. Julia explained this as stress because of school, or that children feel maternal fatigue. Gradually, she began to keep her own observations. Notes about Alice's alleged instability, audio recordings of conversations taken out of context, photos without meaning, which she presented as evidence of inadequate care. When they found these materials on her tablet, it was too late. The social service already had 3 of her complaints, and although the investigation revealed no violations, doubts remained, and Julia continued to send new applications after her release. Alice felt that their family was living under the supervision of a person who enjoyed the chaos she had created. On the day of the tragedy, Alice tried to forget all those months of nerves. She went out to the Clearwater waterfront just to walk, for the first time in a long time, without children, without work, without fear of getting another call. The wind from the Gulf of Mexico swayed the palm trees slightly, and the road smelled like salt water and sunscreen. Alice stopped at the stairs leading down to the lower level of the coast, and there, in the shadow of a concrete flight, she saw Julia. She was standing in front of a camera on a tripod, filming another video for her channel. About toxic parents, as she liked to say. Her voice sounded confident, almost soft, like a professional counselor. In fact, she was talking about Gray, in a way that was embellished and general, but clear enough for Alice not to get confused. Alice didn't remember how she ended up there. All she remembered was that her heart was beating, as if it wanted to break through her ribs. The words came out of her mouth, about the lie, about the children, about how Julia had no right to interfere in their lives. Julia reacted in her usual way, with a smile, a slight tilt of her head, and a soothing voice that always sounded like a challenge. "You're unstable, Alice. I was just trying to protect your children." Those words were the last straw. The argument turned into a fight in seconds. Julia grabbed Alice's arm, trying to push her away, but slipped her bare foot on the wet concrete of the stairs. Alice instinctively pulled her hand away, trying to free herself. Julia lost her balance, only the thud of her body hitting the bottom landing. Alice froze, staring at the motionless figure. Julia was lying on her back, her head at an awkward angle, the camera still rolling. The flashing red light never stopped. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes, but the injury was incompatible with life. Officially, it was an accident. Unofficially, it was the end of a story that began long before the fall. For the Gray family, this death did not bring relief, only a silence that they could not immediately bear. Ontario, November 2018. The school campus in the town of Bowmanville is almost empty after an evening training session. A cold wind whipped through the fallen leaves near the parking lot, and the streetlights cast long yellowish streaks on the asphalt. Thomas Reed closed the door of the administrative building and paused for a moment, adjusting his briefcase of documents. He had always liked the sense of power that came with being a school counselor, deciding fates, writing recommendations, influencing the future. He never questioned whether he had the right to do so. 6 months before the tragedy, 15-year-old Liam Burrows, a quiet teenager who was struggling to adjust after moving away, came to his office. After a brief conversation, Reed wrote down the phrases "signs of aggressive behavior" and "impulsive reactions" in his file. It was a single entry, but it was the one that stopped Liam from joining the youth hockey program he had been training for since childhood. When his parents tried to challenge the record, Reed stood his ground. Risk profile, danger to the team, recommendations do not change. For the boy's father, Michael Burrows, it came as a blow. He was not a man who lost control easily, but he saw his son withdraw, avoid his peers, and his only dream disappear. Michael asked for meetings, filed appeals, and brought in doctor's notes. Reed rejected everything. He liked the role of a man whose signature meant more than the actual facts. Over time, Michael stopped seeing him as a school employee. He saw him as a man who had crossed out his son's future for no reason. That night, Reed walked slowly through the parking lot, thinking about the weekend. He took out his keys, walked to his Hyundai Sonata, and put his briefcase on the roof. It took him a while to notice the man standing in the shadows near the sports building. Michael waited quietly, without moving, as if trying to finally collect his thoughts. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from months of accumulated powerlessness. When Reed noticed him, he only grimaced. "You again?" "We talked about everything." His voice was the same, arrogant, indifferent, burdened. Michael's voice broke. He took a few steps forward, trying to start a conversation, but Reed just shrugged and started to open the car door. "Your son is not a good fit for the program. There's no changing that. Just accept it." That was the last word he said. Michael put out his hand to stop him, but Reed sharply waved him away, pushing the man away with his shoulder. The man instinctively took a step back and saw the consultant get into the car, throwing a dismissive remark. "Educate, not complain." What followed lasted a few seconds. Michael walked around the car and stopped behind it, still saying something about re-examining the case, but Reed was already in reverse. The video from the school's entrance camera showed the taillights flashing, but the car didn't move immediately, as if Reed was hesitating. Then the car shuddered and rolled backwards faster than a normal maneuver would allow. The angle of the car was straight, with no attempt to go around the person behind it. The impact knocked Michael off his feet. He fell to the cold asphalt, and the car dragged him another half-meter while Reed applied the brakes. When he got out, it was too late. Michael lay motionless, breathing heavily, clutching his ribs. Neighborhood lights shone dimly on his face. The ambulance arrived 9 minutes later. Thomas Reed nervously walked around, repeating that he didn't see the man and thought the road was clear. But an examination later proved that he had enough visibility to stop. At the hospital, Michael died of chest injuries and internal bleeding. A week later, investigators found a video showing Reed seeing a silhouette behind the car. He was arrested for involuntary manslaughter and negligence. For Liam, it didn't bring back his dreams, but it at least explained something he couldn't find the words for. Sometimes other people's indifference kills just as much as intent. Arizona, August 2016. The morning air in the Canyon Lake area was dry and crisp, as if blurring the boundaries between sounds and space. By 6 in the morning, the hiking trails were almost empty. Just a few joggers, a few photographers, and tourists trying to catch the first ray of sunlight over the water. Marissa Lane, a 34-year-old accountant, had been choosing this route for years. Running was her way of coping with stress, and that season, there was more stress than anything else. A few months earlier, Marissa had inadvertently found anomalous transactions in the company's financial statements. Payments to strange contractors, duplicate invoices, small amounts that disappeared unnoticed, but raised suspicion. She gathered the materials and passed them on to the management, a standard procedure. But everything became standard only for her. For the man who was exposed, 38-year-old logistics specialist Greg Mennick, this step meant the end of his career. Greg was fired immediately. A case was opened against him. He lost his health insurance, his deposit for a new apartment, and, according to his friends, his control over himself. For weeks after his dismissal, he showed up at the office, trying to fix the misunderstanding, and wrote long messages to Marissa, saying that she had ruined his life. When the company filed an extended report with the police, the messages became alternately threatening and pleading. Then he disappeared for 3 weeks. Marissa was even happy. Perhaps her husband had finally gone into hiding, allowing the system to work. But on August 16th, Greg reappeared, this time in the place she least expected. Marissa started running around 6 in the morning. She ran as usual, headphones, a bottle of water, and a slow climb towards the viewpoint. She walked on steep sections, giving her heart a little rest. As she approached a narrow stretch of trail that stretched over a cliff, she felt a strange presence, that subtle, almost instinctive feeling that she was being watched. At first, she thought it was another runner, until she heard a voice. "Do you still think you did the right thing?" He stepped out from behind the rock outcropping, pale and exhausted, with deep shadows under his eyes. Marissa froze. Then she slowly removed one earpiece. "Greg? What are you doing here?" "Me?" He laughed briefly. He spoke softly, but the tension in his voice was palpable. He accused her of losing her job, her apartment, her relationships, even of having the police breathing down her neck now. Marissa tried to calmly explain that she was just doing her job, but Greg wasn't listening. He took a step forward, and then another. The path at this point was narrow, less than a meter wide. On the right was a stone wall. To the left was a cliff. Marissa stepped back, feeling the loose soil under her feet. "Take the statement away," he said. Marissa shook her head. "I can't lie. You know that. This was the point of no return." Greg grabbed her arm and yanked sharply. Marissa instinctively pulled away, trying to keep her balance. Their bodies collided, and that was enough. A layer of sand fell under Marissa's foot. She staggered backwards, clung to his hand, but he, frightened, abruptly dropped her grip. Marissa fell. The fall was short but fatal. First, she hit her shoulder on a rock ledge, then she twisted and hit her head. Witnesses from below heard a dull sound and saw her body lying motionless between the rocks. Greg fled the scene. But he was found 9 hours later in an abandoned campsite where he was sitting with his hands on his head. He was repeating only one phrase: "She fell by herself, by herself." The forensics showed Marissa died instantly from a head injury. The police found that the conflict was the direct cause of the fall. For many employees of the company, her death was a reminder that the truth sometimes costs more than it seems. And the greatest danger can come not from the system, but from those who are afraid to take responsibility for their own actions. Denmark, November 2019. In Randers, the morning began with a piercing wind that pulled the cold from the Kattegat coast and forced people to hurry indoors. In the small neighborhood near the Stengade, the windows of most houses were still darkened. Only in 82-year-old Ingrid Norgard's apartment was a dim yellow light on in the kitchen. The woman, who once worked in a library, now moved slowly, relying on the help of social workers and nurses. One of them was Annika Lund, a 48-year-old woman who was supposed to be a caregiver by profession, but in fact saw the weakness of others as a way to survive herself. 6 months before the tragedy, Annika began to serve Ingrid, doing small tasks, monitoring her medications, and bringing her groceries. Later, Ingrid entrusted her with the PIN code to her bank card so that she could pay for purchases. It was then that the technical debits began. A few hundred kroner here, small cash withdrawals there. The amounts were so small that Ingrid didn't notice right away. It was her grandson, 27-year-old Mikkel Norgard, who looked at his grandmother's financial reports every month. He saw a pattern. The money disappeared on days when his grandmother did not ask to buy anything. At first, he thought it was a terminal error, but when he discovered more than 10 transactions to Annika's personal account, his doubts disappeared. Mikkel contacted social services and filed a police report. They promised to conduct an investigation. But the checks took longer than justice allowed. Annika continued to work as if nothing had happened. The territorial service limited itself to a preliminary survey, and that was it. Mikkel felt powerless. He wanted to take his grandmother to live with him, but she refused. Her walls were her only support. He tried several times to talk to Annika on the phone, but she answered with indifferent coldness or simply hung up. On Monday, November 18th, Mikkel decided to go to her in person. He knew her schedule, and that at 8 in the morning she usually entered the service entrance of the small building next door. He wanted to talk calmly, to hear at least some kind of answer, acknowledgement, explanation. The corridor at the entrance was cold, concrete, with a metal staircase leading up to a storage room. Annika appeared at exactly 07:57, holding a folder with documents. When she saw Mikkel, she flinched at first, then quickly composed herself. "You have no right to come here," she said. "This is stalking." "Stalking?" Mikkel's voice trembled, not with anger, but with fatigue. "From your own patient." Annika turned away, trying to climb the stairs. Their conversation became more heated as she denied it, laughed, called the write-off a coincidence, a misunderstanding, a systemic error. Mikkel walked behind her, trying to restrain himself, but when she turned around and said, "Your family has always been too trusting. It's not my fault that people don't watch their own money." "You broke her peace," Mikkel said quietly. Annika turned around and tried to push him back. "Get away from me. I'll tell the management." The metal stairs shook under his feet. Mikkel instinctively put his hands out in front of him to steady himself. Annika, who was standing one step up, lost her balance. She swung away, but her soles slipped on the cold metal. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then she plummeted downward. The fall was short and hard. Annika hit her back on the sharp edge of the platform, then her head, and the sound of the impact echoed through the empty corridor. Mikkel tried to grab her, but it was too late. The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. The doctors pronounced her dead on the spot. Multiple rib fractures, lung damage, spinal injury. Officially, it was an accident during a workplace dispute. The police interrogated Mikkel for several days. He did not run away, did not hide his testimony, did not change his story. The hardest thing for him was to explain it to his grandmother, quietly, carefully, so as not to break her completely. The systems worked late again, but this time, the lies and indifference fell not into paper reports, but onto a metal staircase that does not forgive either steps sideways or steps forward. Texas, April 2021. The neighborhood near San Antonio looked calm. Monotonous ranch houses, neatly trimmed lawns, dogs behind fences. But behind the facade of this calmness, a story had been smoldering for 2 years, turning the Carter family's life into a constant state of fear. George Miller, 41, their neighbor, was a man who could find a problem with anything: noise, parking, children, garbage, the smell of barbecue, even the colors of Christmas lights. It all started with small complaints. It continued with threats. The first was the fence. Miller broke out parts of it several times at night, allegedly because it was going beyond the boundaries of the property. Then he bought 2 cameras and pointed them directly at the Carters' windows, the kitchen and the children's room. The police would come and draw up a report, but that was it. George knew the boundaries of the law and knew how to dance on them by literally millimeters. Over time, he moved on to incidents that were harder to track: scratched car doors, poisoned grass on the lawn, anonymous complaints planted in the mailbox. But most of all, he has targeted children. 9-year-old Ethan was afraid to go out into the yard after Miller approached him several times with his phone, filming and yelling that the boy was ruining other people's property by riding his scooter near the property line. The father of the family, Mark Carter, a 38-year-old appliance repairman, tried not to react. He had to work shifts, and his greatest fear was that one day his wife or children would be attacked again. But Miller seemed to enjoy the provocations. He would deliberately scream at night, turning on the generator when he knew the Carters were putting the children to bed. He laughed when they called the police. Each call only made him more confident that they would not do anything to him. On Sunday, April 21st, everything exploded. It was a warm day, and the children were playing outside. Mark was repairing an old grill. Behind the fence, he heard a familiar voice, rough, irritated, with a pressure that meant the beginning of another fight. "Hey!" Miller shouted, coming out into the yard with his phone in his hand. "I'm filming this!" Ethan froze, holding his scooter. The stretch of asphalt he rode on was actually municipal, but there was no point in explaining that to Miller. "Tell me why you can't stay away," he shouted, holding the phone a few centimeters from the child's face. Ethan began to cry. It was a moment that Mark could not bear. He quickly walked to the fence, went outside, and stood between his son and the neighbor. Last time he had limited himself to words. "Get away from my child," he said quietly but firmly. "What are you going to do to me?" Miller spat out. "I have a right. He's trespassing on my property. I'll call the police. They'll listen to me more than you." He leaned closer to Mark, continuing to film. His face was tense, his eyes red. It looked like he had been looking for a moment to cross the line for a long time. Now he thought he had found it. Mark tried to move the phone away and push his neighbor aside so that he would stop yelling in the guy's face. Miller grabbed his elbow, trying to push him back. The movement was sharp, clumsy. Their bodies collided, and for a second, they both lost their center of gravity. Mark pushed him instinctively, not hard, but the way you push someone away from you. Miller took a step back. Under his heel was not asphalt, but a large, sharp stone that served as a decorative curb. The fall was instantaneous. George hit the back of his head. The sound was short, but enough for Mark to realize everything in an instant. Miller remained on the ground, motionless, the phone next to him continuing to take pictures of the sky. The ambulance arrived quickly, but already in the car, the doctors stated his critical condition. In the hospital, George Miller died of intracranial bleeding. For the police, it was a domestic conflict that ended in tragedy. For the Carters, it was the end of 2 years of fear. But there was no relief. Mark had to repeat the same phrase to his son. "It wasn't your fault. You were just on the street, and I just wanted to protect you." But sometimes even the best intentions become part of someone else's death. California, August 2015. Los Angeles was waking up slowly. The morning smog was lying in a thin gray layer over the streets, and the first soft boxes were already flashing on the roofs of the studios. In this city, life was created like a movie, vivid, edited, fictionalized. 26-year-old Layla Norton knew this better than most. Her Instagram grew by leaps and bounds, daily videos, emotional pranks, beautiful shots, and the main figure in all of this, her boyfriend, Jamie Reed. He never agreed to be filmed, but she said that it was necessary for the content. The first videos were innocent. Then they became more violent. Layla filmed him waking him up suddenly at night, hiding his things, and passing off his reactions as tantrums. The audience loved it. Jamie did not. He worked as a service mechanic and didn't want his colleagues to see videos of him looking helpless, funny, or pathetic. But every time he tried to ask Layla to stop, she would say the same thing. "You have to support me. We are a team." The last joke was decisive. Layla filmed him coming home after a 12-hour shift, and she hit him with a pillow stuffed with flour, so he fell and hit his knee on the cabinet. The video went viral, memes were posted, and his co-workers made jokes about it for a week. Jamie stopped talking to her. He was packing his things when she approached him, saying, "You're coming back anyway. Who are you without me?" The next day, Layla had a shoot on the roof of a small photo studio in Hollywood. High concrete edges, markings for models, technical structures, and a narrow metal platform that led to a panoramic edge. She was planning to shoot a lingerie commercial, bright, bold as always. Jamie knew about it and arrived after work, holding a flash drive. It contained the video that Layla wanted to post next, a video in which she filmed his tears after a fight. He stood outside the studio door for almost 5 minutes before entering. Workers were preparing the lights, a photographer was checking the camera, and Layla was standing on the platform, combing through her hair and practicing her pose. She saw him and smiled as if nothing had happened. "Oh, you came. I told you we'd talk again." "You released the video," he said quietly, holding out the flash drive. "All I ask is this. It's got 1 million views, Jamie. You can't stop me." She turned away, signaling the photographer to continue. For her, this scene was the continuation of the show. For him, it was the last point. He stepped onto the platform. The metal creaked slightly. "Layla, stop. This isn't a game." She laughed. "It's always a game, and I always win." His hand touched her elbow, gently, more like a request than pressure. Layla jerked her hand away. The platform was narrow, and the soles of her sandals caught on the softbox cable. She swayed for a second, which could have been saved. They both grabbed hold of each other. But their movements were different. She was trying to push him away. He was trying to hold her. Her knee hit his shoulder, and her balance was completely lost. Layla leaned back and flew down. The pillow with the light on the platform barely moved from the airstrike. The body fell on the metal structures of the lower level. Minimum angle, maximum force. The photographer screamed first. Jamie came down in 20 seconds, although it seemed like an hour had passed. Layla was not breathing. The injury was instantly fatal. The ambulance crew only noted the time. The police questioned everyone present. The cameras showed that the fight was short and chaotic. There was no intention, no plan, just two people who took things too far. Jamie did not run away, did not make excuses. He kept saying one thing: "I just wanted her to stop." Her phone records confirmed that the humiliation video was real, but it did not change the main thing. Death was still death. A fall is a fall. And that roof was where the show ended. Forever. None of these deaths brought justice. They only stopped the stories at the point of highest tension, leaving behind a void and inevitable consequences. Revenge doesn't solve anything. It's just a moment beyond which there is no turning back.